Hey guys, how's it? Good morning. Aloha, this is Jeebs here on the Decomposer Lounge. Throwback Thursday, a band so near and dear to my heart that I account for a lot of my go-to when I think about my soundtrack of life. Where was I during this certain period? And immediately Black Sabbath comes to mind without a doubt. Me looking at that Paranoid album and trying to like, wow, what's going on here and stuff, you know. I mean, I was already, I think about 14, 13 or something when it came out. But I was so taken back by Paranoid, Iron Man, and the production without knowing about production. It was just such a new thing for me that I probably outgrooved the album within 6 months easily. Me and my friends would just, excuse me, get lit and just listen to that over and over and over again and then try to do the riffs and stuff. Of course, the Iron Man riff, right? So for Thursday's Throwback Thursday today, I'm doing Black Sabbath, Iron Man. This is the 2012 remaster, so that's a digital remaster. And so let's do this. I want to thank you guys, like usual. These videos don't support the channel. If you want to support me in the channel, you can go ahead and, excuse me, buy me a cup of coffee if you'd like. Or if you don't feel good about just buying a cup of coffee, but you want to get a little something for your money, you can check out my Patreon, what I've done there. Maybe just come in for 1 month and hang out. Also, the link for Black Sabbath, Iron Man, Spotify will be down below, and the link for the headsets, the AKG 240s, down below. All right, guys. Sorry. First words in the morning, old man, like rusty pipes go, and I hack it like a doogle. Little oyster on the half lung here. All right, here we go, guys. Black Sabbath, Iron Man. This is the 2012 remaster. All right. All right, before we get too far, just briefly, I just love the fact, one of the things that I was enamored with is when when it all started, when they played around with the panning. You know, the kick started off here on the right side and then pulled itself into the middle. You know, the guitar whole power chords that were being held started here and then kind of moved over here and stuff. And the fact of the matter was, back in the days, we had these big old headsets and stuff like that. That was just part of the joy of, you know, figuring out how many headsets we can get through our amp, you know, a radio preamp or phonograph, you know, preamp and stuff, and experience that whole thing. And also the tone of the guitar, and of course the riff. This riff is the godfather, I believe personally, of my generation and then the X generation guitar players. Like, we all needed to learn that first. That was like a rite of passage, you know, and that's just, you know, how I feel about it. And then, of course, at the end of the day, even with the layered voices of Ozzy, giving it that unique effect that is his signature style in his effect of doubling the vocals and stuff like that. Also something that was just so damn new to us, and we were just so stoked, you know. So anyhow, sorry, I don't want to pull away from the energy too much. Here we go.
He was turned to
You know, how does one even make it this far without glamming on the bass is beyond me. That's what I just did. I'm lost in my soundtrack of life right now, because I know I'm doing this here for us here, but I'm just thinking about when I was back, you know, in this really dark cubby hole with green lights. What were they? Dark lights, black lights or something, and posters and stuff. And it's a trip. But anyhow, the bass. How wonderful is the arrangement on the bass? Once again, panned to the left, as I was talking about. They were doing really cool panning stuff, and but the tone of that bass and stuff. Now, I don't know if he used a pick or not. There are a few notes where he's really digging in, but then when he comes up higher on the fretboard and stuff and plays these really great turnarounds, you can hear all these killer turnarounds that he's playing there. That really fills in a lot from already of the time a masterful riff. You know, so the tone, or the cabinet tone, or whatever it is, and how he's really digging into the first lower notes, it gives you like it's a nice buzzy string vibe. But then as he walks around and moves up the fretboard for these turnarounds on his phrasing and stuff, it was such a part, I think, of the '70s vibe, in the sense that the bass had such a strong and powerful presence in rock as it grew through that period. You know, because this is, even though there was already some doubling of guitars and stuff like that, you really had to carry a lot with it. And the drums, finally. And then I'm going to shut up, and then I'm going to let the song go all the way through. The EQ of the drums is fantastic. I mean, really, I'm listening to that going, there's nothing there for me, for my tastes, in a particular style of engineering and on rock projects, of which I have very little experience, but my ears, this EQ, the compression on it, the whole sound, the whole vibe of it is wonderful. I would strive to still shoot for the EQing of the drums like that, you know. And then finally, one last thing, you know, the whole you know, the fact that Ozzy is covering that whole thing as a melody, that was, in of itself, as the riff, it's probably one of the most recognizable melodies in the world as well. And that was driven home, obviously, by Ozzy doing the vocals and doubling that line. You know, it could have been anything else while that riff was happening, but the fact that they married, that was the melody and the riff all the way through and through, I think, is what made this such a masterful song. It's such a memorable one for me, especially my soundtrack of life. Okay, I'm done. We're going to go all the way through it now from this point on, and I'm not going to say another word. Here we go. just a super deep breath for me for a second, just because, God, where were you in your soundtrack of life when you first heard this? I mean, where are your memories going back? Are you already like in your Van tennis shoes with some clay wheels on your skateboard, or on your big wheel? I don't know. I'm sorry. Really dating myself, but music is such a great journey. Anyhow, I want to go really quick back in my final thoughts about, I really didn't say too much about the guitar playing because, I mean, it's an obvious. There's nothing that I could say that can't be added already from guitar players and shows and all kinds of stuff around the world. But what I love about this, once again, is we have that double guitar thing, but in the engineering, they always made sure that the ear focused on this side. So even though there was a doubled guitar happening, it wasn't hard left. It was kind of this way. So if you were looking at the pan pots or the pans, it went hard this way to the right. And then this just seemed like it was probably only at about, I don't know what you would consider that, 30%. And then pulled back. Because I mean, obviously with the bass being on that side, perhaps the decision, maybe they tried to go hard left and right and it battled it, or in the decision to not put the bass in the middle and have Ozzy really consume and the drums, fill up that middle section. Either way you look at it, just incredible. Now the solo at the end, the solo in the middle, it is as legacy as the riff itself, If you listen to the band in this track as many times as I have, you remember every single note. But the solo at the end, what I thought was really fun and unique was, he has the main structure of the solos happening here, and then there's some fun soloing happen here, but you can hear where it was pulled in and out. It sounds like, I don't know, but they let some of it flourish and stuff, and then maybe muted it out or pulled the fader out or something, and then brought it back up. Back in the old days, you would have to practice mixing. In large, there was no automation available, during that time, in large. And so back in the days, I remember in the 70s, you would have to practice your mixes. You'd have notes and stuff, and you'd practice your mixes. You'd be looking at the timing and one fade, and you'd have sometimes all hands on deck, literally. And, who's going to do this? Who's going to move this? How's this going to happen and stuff? And in most cases, like I said, I don't know if this was automated, but in my mind, I picture the engineer, with the pan pot at the beginning, moving the bass over to the center, and then the guitar, that whole thing, that there's that. For me, I remember back in the days, that was a physical move that had to happen. And then of course, finally, the lyrics of Iron Man for me. I mean, this is just such a bizarre, at the time, coming off of Zeppelin and all the other bands that I'd already been listening to, this was this kind of like mythical giant monster with such an intense riff. I mean, it was apropos, I guess. Apropos. A mythical giant Iron Man monster, and to this day, a legendary and pseudo-mythical riff that is the root of, or one of the roots, but principally the root of all riffiness that we've all at one point had to learn first was that riff on Iron Man. Anyhow, Throwback Thursday, thanks for hanging out. I really appreciate it. Please leave your comments on when you first heard Black Sabbath and maybe where you were. I know a lot of people on the channel here are fairly young. I mean, they're not like my age, 60 plusish. But, maybe you heard it with, God forbid, at your granddad's house or with your dad or something. I'd really love to hear that, see how, this song impacted your journey on your soundtrack of life. All right, guys, take care of yourself. And what do I have for you tomorrow? Ooh, I have something very heavy for you tomorrow. Heavy. It's going to be my very first run of black metal tomorrow. Very first time. All right, guys, take care. Aloha. All right.